Everybody, welcome back to the Film Fan Club. Sam Carrico here. We're breaking down Game of Thrones, Season 7, Episode 5, I believe, Eastwatch. This episode was really fun and really fulfilling too, because we got a lot of story elements that we'd been kind of wondering about for the previous, season and a half so far. But let's kind of start with the beginning of the episode, because at the beginning, of course, we get the immediate aftermath of the awesome loot train attack. That was a fantastic part of last week's episode, and they really they answered our question of what happened to Jaime right off the bat, because we see Bronn. I always thought that it was the Tarly's son that Jaime made a bond with at the end of the last episode. I thought it was him that rescued Jaime, but it was Bronn. So Bronn and Jaime are okay, luckily. But Jaime realizes now, hey, that was just one dragon. You really kind of feel, because before the Lannisters have been so brazen and so like, I can handle whatever. And Cersei's still like that to a degree. But Jaime has to go talk some sense into her. He goes and he pretty much says, hey, we're kind of losing, and it seems like everybody's teaming up, and it's kind of weird because I didn't really expect them to kind of fully, for most of our characters except for Jon Snow, to really fully understand the threat of the White Walkers until like season 8 or something like that. But there's a lot of progress made here. Of course, they've been mining dragon glass, and I don't know if they just gave up on that to go decide on. I think they finished something like that. I don't know, but they got what they needed out of the Dragonstone, and now they're on their way to the wall, basically, because Tyrion, as they said in the Inside Game of Thrones kind of after show special, they talk about how Tyrion is the person who comes up with the idea. Well, I mean, if we can't take everybody up to beyond the wall, we got to take one of these whites down to King's Landing. But again, taking a White Walker or just a white to King's Landing, it's very dangerous in the fact that you're going beyond the wall. You're going, as we saw in the trailer for next week's episode, they're going to be surrounded by White Walkers trying to take down these guys, or at least take one of them back to Queen Cersei, which could be a fruitless endeavor anyways, because I still don't know what's stopping Cersei from just killing everybody, all her enemies, if they're just going to come try and present this evidence of White Walkers for her. But, I mean, it will be a nice thing if we do get our characters all, kind of teaming up to take on the incoming threat of White Walkers. Honestly, I thought that the Lannisters would be dead before we even start worrying about the White Walkers. I thought that we were going to pretty much have to deal with the domestic issues and then have to deal with the incoming attack from the dead. But really, I guess we're going to get a team up maybe, or maybe it'll just kind of, that will be what leads to their downfall, is like the Lannisters will try and betray the people, Jon Snow and Targa and Daenerys, and that'll be their downfall. I really liked getting to see Tyrion come face to face with Jaime, because they finally come back to face with Jaime, because they were the two people that actually Cersei hates Tyrion. Tywin hated Tyrion. Jaime kind of actually had some respect for him, but of course there was the whole fiasco where he freed him, and the first thing that Tyrion did after he was freed was went and killed their father. That's kind of a unforgivable kind of thing. So I really liked getting to have them come to face, and even though we kind of understand Jaime still is in a hard place where we know he loves Tyrion, but he kind of still, he doesn't quite forgive him for killing their father, but at least that was a nice scene just to kind of get those two come face to face with each other. And those two actors, of course, Peter Dinklage and the guy who plays Jaime, they're both very good actors. So just kind of have that smaller moment in this episode, which this episode was full of smaller moments, kind of, because the last few episodes had some big battles, in episode 2 and episode 4, there were some pretty big battles and whatnot, and some big events happening in episode 3 as well, but this episode was mostly focused on kind of the character moments and the dichotomy between the characters and their chemistry and the relationships, and I really liked getting to see that, and I think it was very much so on the forefront in that little scene between Jaime and Tyrion, and then following it up with the scene between Jaime and Cersei, where you realize, hey, Cersei's pregnant, Spoiler alert, Cersei's pregnant, and it kind of humanizes the characters a little bit, because I think the writers kind of realized that she'd pretty much lost any sort of humanity, that we kind of empathized with her at all, through Tommen or Myrcella, or even her love for Joffrey. We really kind of needed that, so I think that kind of brings them closer together. And they've been really showing off that, hey, you can understand a little bit, in a selfish way, why Jaime would want Cersei to win the war, not only for, the peace and prosperity for the people, which he probably believes, like he told Olenna in episode 3, he believes that eventually there will be peace under Cersei, but also he just wants this beautiful idea of a family between the three of them like he's never had, and now he's being promised that, so you would understand, kind of give some motivation why he would back her a little bit more, which will ultimately make it more tragic when he becomes the Queenslayer. Speaking of smaller moments, I don't know how you could have missed this. I certainly didn't, but just in case you did, that freaking scene with Gilly, where she's reading about what's an annulment? Well, I heard there was this guy, Rhaegar, who got annulled and then remarried in a private ceremony in Dorne. What's that all about? Holy crap. That means, of course, now we know last year that Rhaegar had a son, Jon Snow, with Ned Stark's sister, and now we've basically, that implies, if she's because Gilly's not really good at reading, so Rhaegar is Rhaegar, so the Rhaegar secretly was married to Ned Stark's sister, and they had Jon, so that means Jon is a true-born Targaryen, which really complicates things as far as the Daenerys' claim to the throne versus Jon's claim to the throne. So I think. Now, well, again, gender, and I don't know how that would play into it at all in the kind of patriarchal system that we have in Game of Thrones, but I think that Daenerys being Jon's aunt would make her, have more of a claim to the throne. But I don't know. This is a very, very, very interesting situation here, because now we know that Jon's not even a bastard at all, which we had kind of had been implied whenever we learned about his true heritage, but this just completely confirms it, and it's so crazy how they just threw that, such a big piece of information, considering how they treated the first reveal that he is a Targaryen to begin with, but then this reveal, they just kind of brushed by it, so I'm really interested to see how this comes together. I mean, a lot of stuff, I've been waiting for Bran to reveal the information that he learned last year with Jon, or even send a raven or something, but he hasn't done it just yet, so a lot of stuff coming to light here. This has been very interesting. Again, we see more with Bran in this episode, and we see that Bran, he gets into the head of a raven, he wargs into a raven, and he sees the army of the Whites, and it's crazy. You really understand that they're a true force to be reckoned with, and going into next week's episode, it's going to be crazy seeing them go against that much people, because we see the Night's King in the trailer. It's going to be crazy that Jon Snow's going to have to combat that, and I wonder who's going to die. Surely someone's going to die next week, because there's so many main characters. Beric Dondarrion and the Hound and the Brotherhood Without Banners. I guess they kind of have a loophole because they can't really die. I don't know. Maybe they can be brought back. And then surely Jon Snow won't be killed off. But we got a lot of main characters going into some dangerous situations next week. So that's gonna be very terrifying. Getting to see Gendry, as I kind of alluded to earlier, getting to see him come back into the swing, it was really nice, because we've been wondering what happened to Robert Baratheon's bastard son. I think he's a bastard. I think yeah, for sure he's a bastard, because they said in that very funny scene, I love that scene where he's like, all right, you're Clovis, don't tell him who your dad is, just tell him you're going to Winterfell just to be a smith, and he's like, all right, hey, my name's Gendry. I'm Robert Baratheon's bastard son. I want to come with you on this adventure. It's like, basically, and it's like, that's just so funny. There are a lot of great little moments of humor here, where whenever the Raven comes at Dragonstone for Jon, he's like, I'm not gonna, Varys is like, I would never read a letter to the king in the north, and then Tyrion's like, well, what was in it? Nothing good. It's so funny. It's just, the show does have a little bit of humor mixed in, and it's really well needed considering what's going on. There's some really tough choices that are made in this episode. At the beginning, when Daenerys burns those two the Tarly father and son alive, which are Samwell's, I guess, brother and dad, and which he never really liked to begin with, but just get the fact that his relatives were murdered by Daenerys in such a gruesome way, it was pretty crazy, and Tyrion tried his best to spare him. He's like, you don't want your entire house to go down, but which I guess that would mean that Samwell would be the one to inherit the Tarly house. So that's interesting. But I wondered, Daenerys made a choice. She stuck by her choice. She's like, you guys are gonna die or bend the knee. They chose not to bend the knee, so she killed him. So whether or not that's just it's really called into question. I don't know where I stand on that. that's really crazy because I don't think I could do that in a situation like that. But also, this is war, this is Game of Thrones, this is fantasy. But that's just that's cold, man. So it makes you understand why Tyrion would want to be like, hey, maybe you shouldn't, maybe he'd be a little bit worried about her becoming the Mad Queen because her father was the Mad King after all. But I don't really like how, I mean, when she was, to be fair, when Daenerys was listening to Tyrion in episode 3, they lost a lot of men that way, and she was losing the war until she stopped listening to Tyrion. So there's reason to be listen to both sides, and you could be on either side of the fence, and it would make sense with this issue. That's what's so good about Game of Thrones is it's so complex. And again, speaking of complexities, Littlefinger versus Arya, those two going after each other. I mean, Arya is the perfect person, I think, to take on Littlefinger because he's such a sleuthing kind of sneaky kind of guy who can just kind of get out of any situation because he's so good at that kind of thing. But so is Arya, so I think that she's the perfect person to kind of fall into this trap. I mean, which we realize it is a trap, so it's unfortunate that she does fall into the trap because she was the perfect person to take him on, I guess, is what I was saying. But she falls into the trap because we realize that Littlefinger was actually, he wanted her to find whatever piece of information she finds, and I'm not sure what she found. I don't think they revealed it to us before the end of the episode, but they're definitely sowing the seeds for some conflict between Sansa and Arya to go into next episode, so it'll be interesting to see what they do, and I really hope that Sansa doesn't become any more of a bitch than she's been in the previous episodes and seasons, because I was just talking about this with Hannah the other day. They really haven't done a lot to advance her storyline other than she's been tortured a lot, and she's gotten older, and now she's in a position of power in Winterfell, but she's still, I mean, betraying Jon, or, she's a hot mess of a character, and I think they really need to the writers need to decide where they're going with her and kind of work with, get a solid storyline for Sansa, because really so far they haven't done a very good job. She's been a pretty weak part of the characters, or a part of the whole. She's been a weak part of the character roster. So I'm interested to see how they clean that storyline up going into the next episode. Overall, this episode I think was really good. Kind of smaller moments, smaller kind of story aspects, kind of scheming, and just kind of laying out a lot of important information going forward, and getting a lot of these kind of characters teamed up or primed to be teamed up going forward in the wars to come. So I'm really looking forward. My main questions are, who's going to die next episode? Because surely someone's got to make a sacrifice. Are the Lannisters actually going to consider teaming up with their opposing, the usurpers in their eyes to defeat the White Walkers? Will they actually even get a White down there for them to have some proof? This is all left to be seen, and hopefully they clean up Sansa's storyline. And man, I hope Arya is the one to take out Littlefinger, because he definitely deserves to be taken out. Also, Samwell, when's he going to learn a little bit about about his parents, his father and his brother dying, and he could inherit the House Tarly? So that a lot of stuff, a lot of important information that the characters don't know yet. So a lot of cool things need to come to light before the end of the season. I'm not sure if they will, but I really hope they do. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode of Game of Thrones, Eastwatch, in the comments section below. Well, thanks for checking this video out, guys. If you liked it, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel for more content like this. We got a lot of other movie reviews, TV recaps. I've been watching The People vs. O.J. Simpson recently, so I'm going to be doing a season review of that. So make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel so you don't miss a thing. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram as well while you're at it, @Samuel D. Carrico, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks again.